week 3, I think, for me, spoke louder than any other week. And I think it was probably just all a matter of timing, right? Because we talked about waiting expectantly and looking at how when we wait expectantly, things don't always quite turn out as we expect. Talked about the TV show Nailed It.
Yes.
Which have you
I'm not sure I have seen it. No, I don't think so.
It's a great TV show. I love it. It's great for a laugh.
Yeah.
But it's where the premise is where there's a cake or cookies or something that are beautifully decorated, beautifully made.
By the top chefs of the world.
By the top chefs. And then, these 3 contestants have this competition to see who can get it.
Or just closest. Average Joe Blows? Average
Joe Blows, yeah. Who think they can cook and generally cannot. Yeah. So you end up with a hot mess, basically, at the end of it all. It's a great show, very entertaining. But that's so... it's so much like what happens when
in real life.
We have these things, expectations. Yeah. We do all this planning and preparation, and so often what we put all of our effort into and we have this image of what we think is going to turn out like, it's just not quite right.
There's just something that's not
quite there. Not quite there. So, I was thinking about this and the birth of Jesus, how we talked about it earlier, how it was not what the people expected, not what they would have been looking for, that Jesus was born to this young couple who fled persecution, and he was born in a stable. He wasn't born to nobility in a palace on silk sheets surrounded by servants.
No, definitely not. Total opposite to what the people then were expecting. I mean, we're used to it now, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
And even sometimes in Christian manger scenes, Christmas card manger scenes that we see, it's all very pristine.
Yes, yeah.
And it's so not what it was.
No, not at all.
If you've been to it, if we went to Glynis and Bert's barn, it would not look like that, would it?
Not at all.
And it wouldn't smell like that either.
It certainly wouldn't smell very pleasant either.
And that's what Jesus was born in. And, sometimes we can go, really? Yeah. But that's what God chose.
That's what God chose. And this is the thing. So the people of Israel, they'd been expecting the coming Messiah. They'd been expecting, this warrior king who was going to wipe out their oppressors. And they got a humble baby.
In nappies.
who grew into a man, a strong man, but his strength was so different from what they expected. Yeah. And so often our expectations don't quite align with God's plan either.
No, don't you love the way that our expectations far outweigh what God gives us? Didn't you use that? Ephesians more than all we can think or imagine. You use that scripture, didn't
Ephesians 3:20 says that God is able to do immeasurably more than we could ever even ask or imagine. I mean, it's mind-blowing that he could do so much more than I could even imagine.
But that it's borne out in the manger, isn't it?
Yes.
That, we couldn't imagine that in a manger. And look what came from that manger in Jesus' life, in his example, in his living, in his loving, and in his death.
Yeah.
It was not what anybody would have expected.
No.
But it was what God needed and what God wanted at the time.
Yeah. Right through his life, Jesus went beyond expectations. And so often... we have these expectations. They don't align with what God has in store. God will always work. God will always carry out his plan, but it's just not always how we would expect it to look.
No.
And but we can align ourselves with him and with his will and with his expectations by communicating with him in prayer and growing in relationship with him and focusing on what's important. And God will blow our minds. And the reason why this week spoke so loudly to me was because it was the week that I found out I was moving.
It was that week. It was. Yeah. And that blew our expectations, didn't it?
Yeah. We had this whole plan and idea of what next year would look like, and it completely blew it out of the water. And in that, I've had to say that God is able to do immeasurably more than I could ever ask or imagine, that he is able to work all things together for his good. And that regardless of what I think things should look like, his expectations will far exceed that.
And I think we'll both take that into next year.
Yeah,
I think that'll
absolutely.
be a word for us both for next year, because neither of us were expecting what happened. But we take what God gives in the grace that he's taught us how to.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I mean, we might fight it a little bit. Both of us might have fought it a little bit, but it's God's way. And over and above that, in a fight, we accept this unexpected from God.
Yeah.
Because it's what God is. He's the God of the unexpected.
Yeah. So it causes us to focus on the things that are important in this Advent season as well. And it causes us to think about how God will answer our prayers, but maybe not in a way that we would expect. And that things might turn out quite as we expect, but we know that God's hand is in it. So we wait expectantly for what is going to come.